Greetings, everyone. This is Sage Armageddon. I'm coming to you again with another Sage's Dojo video. In this video in particular, I wanted to talk about meter management with Chun-Li. Of course, meter management in Street Fighter 6 is very important, as if you play against decent players, people that actually know what they're doing. Once you're in burnout, they can kind of just bully you into the corner and then put you into a checkmate situation in which you lose the game. Um, because you're going to take a freak ton of damage, probably about 70% of your HP, if not more. So, yeah, you don't want to go into burnout. Now, the reason for this video is, as requested, I wanted to go ahead and explain why meter management is extremely important for Chun-Li specifically. Now, Chun-Li, of course, a lot of people try to play more aggressively with Chun-Li. They'll do things like this and in order to try to put pressure on the opponent and then put themselves into burnout. Now, the thing about Chun-Li is even more so than other members of the cast, you don't want to do this because she is helpless when she's in this state. Other characters like Ken or Cammy, um, Sagat probably as well, though I'm not too familiar with them. They can just kind of, when they go into burnout, they can just kind of keep mashing in your face all day. Ken can do Jinrai bull crap. Sagat can do flow charts with Tiger Knees and his quote unquote Jinrai stuff. I'll go ahead and give a brief example here. Now, this is nowhere close to optimal because I don't use these characters, so I don't actually know the routing, but it should give a general visualization of what I'm talking about. So let's say we have Ken and Burnout here. We're going to go ahead and get rid of all of that. So we're in Burnout now. Now, something that you can do with somebody like Ken is you can do some bullcrap like this. Right? You see Ken players constantly abusing this bullcrap. You can do things like this. You can keep your opponent... You can keep pressuring your opponent even though you're in burnout, so that that way they can't actually try to do anything to you. And there are a lot of characters that can, aggressive characters that can do something like this, but Chun-Li specifically cannot really do this. And the reason why is because it's the only thing that she has that that gives you plus frames is this. And you have to be right in their face. You can't even chain it more than once, except in very specific situations. So she doesn't have pressure like Ken. She can't keep making people guess all day long, forcing them into a situation where they have to guess. She just doesn't have the toolkit for that. Her whole thing is to play neutral and to punish people for making mistakes, things of that nature, right? Which is more defensive in its nature of how you would play in order to do that. And when you're in burnout with Chun-Li, you just can't do that. Not only do you not have your OD reversal that you can use to keep people off of you, but you don't have a way to, keep them at bay. So you do not want to go into burnout with this character. Now, the three main ways that you want to spin meter with this character is, one thing I can say is you don't want to just willy-nilly just drive, rush, cancel off of anything that you get anytime you make a connection with the opponent. You want to actually have a plan and be methodical with your approach with her. So I've devised three specific situations in which you want to use meter management with. I've devised three situations in which you would likely use meter with Chun-Li. And the first thing is if you're like in neutral and you catch your opponent slipping, let's say they whiff a move and you want to get them into the corner or something like that. So let's go ahead and let's say we're playing neutral. So we're going to get Chun-Li to do a block reversal here. She's going to block wall. Let's say that the opponent whiffs something, right? And we catch them doing it. Then we can use our meter in order to push them into the corner, right? Let's turn that off for right now. All right. So something like this. Oh, whoops. Oh, come on. There we go. get them into the corner, and then you can run Oki on them, and they're cornered, right? That's the situation that you can use to get your to that's a situation in which you want to use your meter is to put them into the corner. Now you don't want to do something like this where like you're trying to go from corner to corner or something of that nature. You don't want to be doing crazy stuff like that. You don't want to be doing crazy stuff like this. Not only are they not cornered, but you're burning yourself out for no reason. If you're not going to put them into the corner, you want to devise different ways of getting your combos that don't involve you using meter. And I'll explain that in more detail, but something as simple as this. Let's say you catch your opponent lacking in neutral. And you want to get a knockdown, you can just do it like that. Right? That requires some execution, but it is a way in order to help get the knockdown and push them to the corner without using meter. This is useful for when you either don't have the meter at all to work with, or you're trying to avoid burnout. Right? Like I said, you don't want to be using 3 or more bars unless you're putting your opponent into the corner. Something like this from the middle of the screen, they're cornered, right? That's the type of situation you want to do that. So the second situation is general use, utility. Now you can do things like, of course, you can drive rush at your opponent because it only costs 1 bar. That's not too bad, right? And then by the time you make contact with your opponent, you're going to be getting more meter back, right? So we're not doing optimal combo structure right now. I'm just kind of pointing out, drive rush and how you will get your meter back once you make contact with your opponent. You see, you only technically lost half of a bar. Right. Notice how you get the bar back as you're making contact with your opponent and you're pushing buttons and things of that nature. Especially if you use this. Capcom made this so you get a lot more meter back for hitting or them blocking this. So, now in terms of how to drive rush optimally, that's going to be for another video. But, and this one specifically, you can do things like drive rush at your opponent. Like if you throw a fireball and you want to drive rush behind it, something like that, right? Feel free to do things of that nature. Also, if you're in very specific situations, you can use EX Kokoken, like if you're fighting a Sagat, a Guile, or any character that is extremely annoying with fireballs, and you're having a difficult time getting in, but you're behind, you have lower health and the clock is ticking, and you need to get in. Every now and then you can kind of throw one of these out in order to help reset the situation so that you can gain some space and try to patiently make your way closer. You don't want to be doing things like this because the damage that you're getting for doing that is negligent. You're getting about 800 damage if it hits the opponent on full, which is not all that crazy, right? That's even less than a throw. So getting damage is not the purpose of fireballs. They can add up if you keep getting hit, but more often than not, decent players are not going to be getting hit by a lot of fireballs. So generally speaking, if you're in a fireball war, you want to parry the fireballs that your opponent is throwing at you, right? You don't want to always be doing this because you're losing more than they are. Anybody that's decent at this game is going to allow for you to do this, and then once your meter gets low enough, they're going to jump on you and try to get rid of the rest of it by making you block her. So you don't want to do that. You want to be smart with this. Don't just throw it out randomly. Unless now there are situations, of course, if your opponent is really low and you make a read, you can do something like this. But you don't want to be thinking, oh, I'm tired of fireballs. Let me just do this so I can get some damage and win the fireball war. No, you don't need to do all that, right? You want to use this very sparingly and intelligently. So that's the second reason. The third reason you will want to use meter is something called a cash out combo. Now, a cash out combo is when your opponent is at a specific health region, usually about 65% health or less. Cash out combos are when you use everything you got in order to get the maximum damage output to kill your opponent if they do something stupid, right? So let's say, now I might butcher these because some of these combo routes can be kind of difficult execution wise. But let's say that the opponent, let's say that we get a knockdown and shimmy. And I dropped the combo. But I think we get the main point here. Alright. You're gonna use everything you got. Now I dropped that combo, but that's easily like about 6,000 damage right there. So my opponent is at 60%. That would kill them if it landed. That is not the most optimal cash out combo, I'm sure, but it's a good example of it. It's when you're using all of your resources in order to kill your opponent. This is not the easiest thing to do. It requires training. You have to be aware of your meter. You have to be aware of your opponent's health. And you must catch them actually, whiffing something like like you just saw with the OD reversal that Chun-Li tried to mash on Wake Up. You went for the shinny. Now, there are other things that there are other methods of doing this that aren't as damaging that you can learn that might be easier to do. Probably one of the easiest cash out combos I can think of that's only about like 45%, I think, is something along the lines of this. Okay, so that's about 55%. So the opponent's health bar was most likely I've most likely have it set to 50% here. Let's take a look. Oh, it's actually at, oh, that's right, the knockdown. So the knockdown plus that's easily over, that's about 61% of their HP. So that's one of the easier ones. Of course, there are other things you can do, like right, and I keep dropping that, but yeah, I think you get the point. So the whole point of the cash out combo is to kill your opponent, basically, right? They require some execution, so you really want to practice them, and you have to be very good at controlling the pace of the match and very aware of your resources in order to do something like this, as well as your opponent's health. So some things that you want to do is you want to practice against the opponent's health bar and eyeball what the health is, and then learn a combo that you can use to punish your opponent to the maximum for making a grievous error. Usually it's going to be a punish counter. This combo route in specific leads to the optimal damage, but it only works on punish counter because the heavy Hosenshu does not connect if they do not get punish counter by back heavy. So this is more of the optimal route, which is what you saw me doing first. Let's see if I can not drop it this time. No, we're gonna keep dropping the head stomps, but whatever. I think you get the point, right? So that's the third reason that you want to use your meter with Chun-Li. There might be a few very, very minor reasons elsewise why you would use her meter, but generally speaking, that's the only reason you want to use it. You don't want to be doing weird stuff like this. Unless like they're at like 30% health or something like that, but we're not going to get into that, right? Generally speaking, like if your opponent is blocking or something, and you're just trying to, let me turn this off, sorry. And you're just trying to open them up, you don't want to do that, right? Especially not with Chun-Li. Other characters like Ken can do that more easily because you can put them in a Jinrai tornado that forces them to guess. Otherwise, he's going to keep doing it until they go into burnout, right? So characters like Ken, Cammy, blah, 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 can get away with things like that, but Chun-Li cannot. Chun-Li is all about controlling this space here. So when you're trying to pressure your opponent, you want to pressure them defensively in such a way that it resets the neutral. Right? You don't want to do things like this, and I'm guilty of this myself. But you know, you'll do something like that and then try to do a parry afterwards when they try to take their turn in order to steal it. But you're minus in your opponent's face. Like we discussed earlier, Chun-Li is she's not very good at, you know, keeping people from being able to match in her face. That's part of the reason why you want to keep your meter so that they can show you what they're trying to do, what their strategy is, and you can find mistakes in their play and capitalize on it. But if you make yourself minus in your opponent's face, you're going to put yourself into a blender. This is technically a situation in which you lose the neutral, in which they can put you in a tornado. Any decent player will take advantage of that. Like I said, I'm guilty of doing this myself, but it's something I need to work on. You don't want to do this. You want to try to reset the neutral. If your opponent blocks and you just end with something like this, that's resetting the neutral. The only two states you want to be in when playing with Chun-Li in neutral is you got the knockdown and you decide to run your Oki on them to make them guess. Or if they block, you reset the neutral. You can just do something like this. They can't punish you for that, obviously. And they can't put you in a tornado from this range. They're gonna have to move a little bit closer, or you can do some inventive stuff here, like that. All right. Now Chun-Li, as we were discussing earlier, you don't want to be pressuring like your Kim or Cammy by burning a bunch of meter. You only want to use the meter to put them into the corner, utility purposes, or cash out combos like we discussed before, right? Those are the only reasons. You don't want to be using the meter trying to replicate what you see Ken players doing by doing stuff like that. What you want to do with Chun-Li is she's more of a defensive character, it seems, based on her kit. So you want to maintain this and take control of it. If they jump, you anti-air them. If they drive rush, you check it. If they try to skip neutral with Dragon Dash or Tiger Knee, you check it, right? You use things like the token to help you to control that space, and you wait for your opponent to whiff a button, and then you catch them slipping, and then you do something like that, right? But let's say that you're just playing neutral, and you either don't have meter or you're trying to preserve meter. Something that you can do if your opponent gets caught with something is this requires some execution, but you can just do that. And then you have access to, let's turn that off. And then as you can see, you have access to your Oki situations. Right. +4. Oops. Go for the grab. Right. They have to guess, right? So you can force your opponent to guess without using any meter. It's not the most damage, but you're pushing them to the corner, and you know they have to guess, right? Which is the whole point of what you're trying to do, is make them guess as much as possible. That's the meta for Street Fighter 6, right? So you could do that by doing something like that. You don't have to do anything crazy like this, unless you have a very specific reason, like you're trying to set up a safe jump or something like that. And let's say that you're playing neutral with your opponent and they're blocking, right? They're blocking everything that you're doing and stuff like that. Instead of doing something like this, things like this to try to open them up, things that you can do are something simple, like this. This is a pseudo hit confirm. Because obviously, if you know Chun-Li, when you get the counter hit on the jab, this will connect. So you're playing neutral, and your opponent is mashing. Let's say that we're gonna block all standard. We're gonna put block reversal on, and let's say that you catch your opponent mashing. You can do something like that. Or you can go into a spinning bird kick, which is a little bit trickier because you have to really be paying attention to if they get hit or not. Right? But this doesn't require any meter. Right? Now it has to be done from the standing because that's the only way that the medium punch will come. So it's tricky to do. You have to be on your P's and Q's with this. I'm kind of just relaxing at the moment, but I say you're playing and you catch them slipping. This was something that's easier to do is to just do something like this. You're still +3 in their face, which means that you still can take your turn back and continue to pressure them. It also resets the neutral, as you can see. But it puts you at a +3 so that your opponent is at a deficit. If they do a jab when you do this, you trade. Same thing with this. And then, of course, you can also walk up and throw, but that's not really guessing because if they see you walking up, they can push a button. But you're so close to them, it might as well be guessing. Right? So it's not a full guess, I don't think, but more often than not, turtle walk speed is so fast that you can get away with doing something like this. So you can do strike throw mix-ups with that if trying to do something like this is too hard for you. So, but those, that's a way to, in order to get your opponent into a bad situation without having to use meter. Now, if your opponent is blocking everything, let's turn this off. Yep, they're blocking everything that you do. You're playing neutral and they just won't bite, right? You can harass them, right? See, they're still losing drive gauge. Anybody decent doesn't want to burn out. So as their drive gauge starts getting whittled, they're going to start being more aggressive in order to keep from losing that drive gauge. Good players will even eat a combo in order to preserve the last of their bars, right? Because you do not want to get put in burnout in this game. So something that you can kind of do if you're playing neutral or something of that nature is, you can do something like this. Right? Your opponent can't really do anything about that. The most that they can kind of do is they can mass drive impact or super, but that's most likely super or an OD reversal, but that's almost never going to happen. Because if you just do a jab into this, nobody's going to react to it. Unless you're being super obvious and you have a rhythm, nobody's just going to react to you doing that and just mash it. So you can kind of, when you're in neutral, you can just randomly just do this. You'll see players like Justin Long and Moki do this all the time. Some finicky things that you can do are things like this. Right? Now the thing about this sequence is technically they can mash on you, but it's hard, right? If they block this, by the time you go into the stance, I'm pretty sure an OD reversal will not hit you. Let's go ahead and set Chun-Li to do that. And then, see, well, I got hit. Oops. See? Now, somebody like Ryu might be able to, let's test that out here. Let's test out like Ryu. Since he has more range on this. See? They can't mash through that. In order to get you, they will have to mash when you're going into the medium kick. But like I said, nobody's going to do that unless you're just being super obvious. So when you do that, that's pretty much safe, right? So you don't have to worry about being hit when you're, when you're doing a sequence like that. As long as you're not being ridiculously predictable with it, right? So you can do something crazy like this. They can't drive impact you. Let's go ahead and set the Chun-Li bot to do that again. See, I'm mashing drive impact. The only point that I can drive impact is between the medium kick, which if you can react, you should be able to stop it. Or when she's going into the low. But like I said, when it comes to the low, can also be canceled into drive impact. So if my opponent decides that they want to mash drive impact while I'm doing that sequence, I can technically, right? I usually don't immediately do this. I give it a little bit of time to see what my opponent's going to do. If they decide that they want to whiff a button, then you can also catch them slipping with that. Um, Let me see. Crouching medium. You can also do something with this attack as well. This is probably better for baiting people because because the way that she positions herself, she pushes her hurt box back so it's harder for your opponent to actually counter you. So if you give it a little bit of delay, you can catch people whiffing buttons. You don't have to drive rush unless you want. You can cancel this if they drive impact. See, no meters being used for that, right? So when you're playing neutral, feel free to do little stuff like this, right? Just harass your opponent. I messed up right there. But if you can see, you can also do the same thing with the light one as well. No, I think I usually use the medium one because it's just better for controlling the neutral in general without being hit. You know? But that's what you kind of want to try to do when your opponent is blocking. And instead of when you're trying to open them up, you don't want to do stuff like this because you're not that type of character. Chun-Li's not made like that. You want to harass them. You want to provoke them to run into your neutral by being an annoying, insufferable little wench, right? So by constantly doing stuff like that, throwing the tokens, you can mix up the stance stuff. So you can go into if they're crouching a lot, you can go into something like this. Now, this isn't supposed to be like her movements and how to sequence things as much, but it ties into the meter management. It's to help you see what you can do in order to catch your opponent without using meter, whether they're blocking or being hit. It doesn't matter. We were able to go over both of those things. So you can even just do something like this. They can't punish that. They can't even drive impact through that. See? Chun-Li is blessed in that regard. You can kind of just, as you can see, even if you do it from max range, it still doesn't reach you in time. Now, that's a heavy Kokoken. If you do anything that's slower, you're going to get tagged. Oh, no. Even the light Kokoken. Interesting. Right? Okay, so I just learned something. You can do the light Kokoken as well, and they can't catch you. Right? So stuff like that. Just be annoying. I pelt people with Kokokens constantly. It makes them very impatient, and it makes them want to jump and do stuff to try to, stop you from doing that because they are losing drive meter. Chun-Li is all about controlling this range. As you can see, you can do that without using meter, right? Overheads that go pretty far, and obviously if your opponent gets hit with the overhead. Let me see something here. Okay, so that's not going to work the way that I thought that it... Oh, it does. You have to do it from maximum range. Now, you don't have to use meter. I'm not familiar with doing it this way, but let's take a look. No meter. See? 2,600... I mean, that's 26% of their HP bar. No meter was spent, right? So, control this space. Make use of your stance. Find ways to make them make mistakes and then punish it. And then if you're trying to push them to the corner, then feel free to spend some meter. But then when you get them here, unless you're about to kill them in the game, you don't need to worry about trying to spend a bunch of meter doing stuff like this, right? You can just kind of harass them from this distance. Hit them out of the air if they anti-air. I mean, if they jump, you can just anti-air them. Make them whiff buttons so that you can punish it. Right? Listen, you can do this without using meter as well. It's some pretty creative ways. But that's not going to reach. Let's try this. So it's a little tricky, but yeah, there are definitely ways that you can do this without spending meter. See, no meter was needed. You could still run Oki. Um, let's try the light one. I'm sorry. It's tricky to punish this. I'm doing the light version, actually. There we go. Okay, I was doing medium by accident. Freaking muscle memory is a trick sometimes. Alright, so you can run OP off of it, and that only uses barely any meter, right? And then, of course, when you do a media like that, you're +4. Well, let's get her to stop blocking for a minute here. So when you do an OP, when you're doing OP like this, you're +4. So if your opponent tries to press a button, you can continue to pressure them. You can get trade combos or things of that nature. Let's see. Like that, right? So if you think they're gonna block, you can just you can train yourself so that you can have a sequence that you do to allow you to hit confirm to see if they're being hit or not. That's going to be up to your creative ventures when it comes to that. But hopefully that was helpful. I was able to go over, in summary, we were able to discuss why managing meter with Chun-Li is so important. And we were able to go over the 3 main reasons why you would want to use meter with Chun-Li. And we were also able to go over ways to get to use your, to be able to play and pressure your opponent the way Chun-Li would want to do so without actually using meter. That way you can preserve it for when your opponent decides they want to jump on you. You'll have plenty of meter to give them a chance to F up, and then you can punish them for it. You don't want to be on 2 bars, 1 bar, and your opponent decides that they're going to start jumping in on you with Sagat and Kin, because you're going to lose the game very fast. So try to preserve your meter as much as possible outside of the 3 reasons that we discussed. Of course, there are more things that can be discussed when it comes to this. We could write an entire essay on this, but you know, if you have any questions or want to leave any feedback or comments, or if you just want to know something more or have any questions for me specifically, feel free to message me in my comment section. Or for those that this video was made for, and the thread that we're discussing it in, feel free to leave a comment with any questions or any insights or new things that you learn that could teach me something that I could use to improve my game as well. I'm always open for that. But thank you very much for tuning into this video. It's a little bit off the cuff, so sorry if you see some sloppiness or no script or anything. But if you have any questions, feel free to do that. Leave a like and subscribe if you're willing. This is going to be Sage Armageddon signing out. I hope you have a great day.